Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we are going to be going over Living Tribunal. What this card does, is it worth your tokens, and what are some neat day one decks for it. So, what is the Living Tribunal? It is a 6/6 with the ability Ongoing. Split your total power evenly among all locations. So this is a interesting ability. Initially, this card was shown as a 6/4. Turns out he is a 6/6, so I guess that will help him out a little bit in terms of getting more power spread around the board. However, maybe might make him a little bit worse in a Mr. Negative style deck. So this card is a cool effect. I think the animation for it is neat, kind of shows his face in the sky. And it's a cool character with a cool design, but in terms of, is this card actually worth buying for 6,000 tokens? I think this is a very, very easy pass, unless you just feel like you have tokens to burn. And I imagine not too many people are in that position, because tokens get expensive. So I just don't think this card is going to have any immediate homes. People are going to build around it, and we'll look at some brews that are all focused around it. But Living Tribunal is a very all-in card. It's a card you kind of have to build around if you want to be able to play it. And splitting your power among 3 lanes is often not the best thing to be doing in Snap. Obviously, this will depend a bit on the meta. But right now, I think it's just really hard to, even when you're in like a perfect scenario where everything lines up and you get your Iron Man and your Onslaught and your Tribunal, dividing that total number by 3, it's a lot smaller than you might think it would be. So yeah, this definitely seems more of like a for fun card to me, more of a Timmy card where if you really like going all in on a combo deck, even though you know it's inconsistent, much kind of like Hela or other things of that style, or Mr. Negative, maybe this is for you if you're okay with the fact that you're not going to win a lot, but when you do win, it is going to be really cool and really flashy. This is definitely a card that is appealing to that group of players, but if you actually like winning games, I don't think Living Tribunal is going to be worth your 6k tokens. Especially when they have announced that 2 cards next month are going to be starting in Series 4. So you can actually hold those tokens and maybe get 2 cards instead of 1 if you're interested in some of the June cards we have coming up next month. So this is going to be a pass from me. I think most people should probably pass on this card unless you're in the previously aforementioned group where high rolling, playing these feast or famine style decks is really your favorite thing to do. Then maybe it's worth a consideration. I probably will be passing on this card. There's a chance I end up caving just to try out some fun meme stuff, but I have a lot of tokens to burn, so I'm not as concerned about the cost there. But if you're more limited on tokens, like most players are, this really is hard to justify 6,000 tokens for. Alright, so if you are someone who is going to be picking up this card, what do you want to do with it? Well, if you want to be a negative gamer, this is the one I cooked up. I've seen a few people trying stuff like this, and it doesn't work a whole lot, but when it does work, it does some very silly things. This is a Jane negative deck. The whole thing with this deck is we're trying to get our negative out on turn 3. Hopefully we have Jane already in our hand so we can play her on 5, and that is going to draw all of our 0 cost cards. So after negative flip, that is Mystique, Iron Man, Null, Zola, and Taskmaster. We can put out a pretty absurd amount of power doing this, especially when you end up Arnim Zolaing a Null, or Zola an Iron Man into a Null lane. It gets pretty silly pretty quickly. So this is a definitely a high roller kind of build, but I think this is probably the deck that if everything goes right, you can put out some of the most power in the game possible. So that's naturally what you're going to try and do in a Living Tribunal deck. Felt like a natural fit here. Obviously Tribunal itself is not going to get impacted by the negative flip, but if all of our other cards cost 0 on the final turn, it doesn't really matter. Magic, pretty important for helping out here too. Not only can it get us a negative draw, but we do get another chance to just get our combo pieces so we can go off with the Tribunal. And then the ramp package of Psylocke and Zabu to help guarantee getting Mr. Negative on 3 or maybe Jubileeing into it. So that's our first deck here. If you're a fan of Negative, it's by far not the most consistent version of Negative, but Negative was never a very consistent deck to begin with. So if you want to just try and do a really absurd final combo turn, this is probably a good way to do it. Another very greedy combo-centric version of this deck is going to be Hela. So why not just throw Tribunal into the mix here, as Hela is one of the decks that basically is able to put a pretty absurd amount of power out at the end of the game if things go correct. Overall, this is probably redundant. Like, if you're getting Hela out, you probably don't need Living Tribunal, is kind of the first thing that comes to mind. But hey, if you want a flashy place to put this in, this is probably the place to do it, I would imagine, and it gets us around having to actually cast the Living Tribunal for its cost. We just resurrect it, as we do with our other big cards here. A lot of big cards in the deck: Magneto, Giganto, Infinite, Death. Thought about putting Sif in this, but I figured we'd just go full all-in on the high roll. We're going to be trying to use MODOK to discard our hand, Hela, bring back all those cards, and hide it behind the new buffed Invisible Woman. Hellcow for a little bit of redundancy for those times we don't draw the MODOK. We can just try and win with the Hela. That is another reason you might want to consider Sif, but I opted to put just the most power we can in this, so we're putting in cards like Iron Man, and She-Hulk naturally fits with this kind of deck, especially if we're able to get the magic off. We could always pass turn 6 into play Infinite She-Hulk, so maybe we're not fully reliant on the Hela win condition, which is nice to have as like a backup plan. But yeah, Hela, again, another one that's never been very consistent. It's easily countered, but it just seems to fit best with what Living Tribunal is trying to do. Next up, we have a full ongoing list. So this is all about stacking one lane, making it really big, and getting the Tribunal effect off. So basically, we are stacking up with things like Iron Man, Omega Red, Onslaught. Mr. Fantastic is kind of useful as well in that regard, particularly for Omega Red. Atuma might look like a weird inclusion here, but we have him because he is one of the biggest power things we can do in the 4 spot. And if you hide him behind the Invisible Woman, he doesn't actually blow up if there are other things there at the end of the game. That's a very convenient interaction. Magic, again, because we really do want to play both our Onslaught and our Tribunal, so getting that extra turn is helpful. Wave and Electro also help with that, getting us in a position where we're able to play 2 6-drops in a game through various different methods. Cosmo is our main source of protection, as obviously this deck is very weak to Enchantress, so we try and keep it hidden behind the Invisible Woman or the Cosmo, where the opponent cannot interact with it. And since we're going to be floating some mana along the way, Sunspot seemed like the premier 1-drop for this style of deck. So if you want to go in a more ongoing all-in combo direction, this is probably what I'd try out with Tribunal. And last but not least, we have High Evo Tribunal. This is another one I think is probably going to be more meme than good, but there's a neat idea here, which is basically we can use Wave and Magic to cheat out the Hulk early or cheat out the Tribunal early, and then benefit from the fact that we have a really juiced up Hulk. Magic also enables us to pass with Sunspot, get a bunch of benefits from that. Between Misty Knight and Cyclops and Sunspot, we get benefits from our floating, and then we can slam the Hulk and She-Hulk together on the final turn, so deck can still win through things like that. Wave is useful because not only does it help us get out the Tribunal sometimes, but it's also a very good control tool against the spam decks like Kitty Pryde or Sarah. Shocker finding a bit more of a home here, because if we can get it to hit our Tribunal or our Hulk, that might enable us to play both of those cards without the need for something like Magic or Wave, which is definitely convenient, gives that good redundancy. And then we're running Armor and Cosmo because this deck very, very much relies on its big hitters in She-Hulk and Hulk, so we need to make sure those cards are not being interacted with. and I also expect there to be a bit of a rise in the amount of Killmonger due to the popularity of the high Evo Landlock deck. So protecting our Sunspot and Misty as well also seems really good. Cosmo, I think, is just a really underrated card right now. Surprised a lot of people are not running it. But yeah, if you want to go a high Evo direction, this is the way I would go with Living Tribunal. There we have it. All the decks for Living Tribunal Day 1. Again, all the deck lists will be in the description as always if you want to import them. And I'd love to hear from you. Are you excited about this card? Are you passing on this card? If you are getting it, what is your plan with it? Are you going to be trying out one of these decks? Do you have your own brew in mind? Let me know in the comments, because I'm sure some creative people are probably going to come up with some neat ideas with this card that I and many other people haven't thought of yet. So very curious to see what the community does with it. Though admittedly, I don't expect a lot of people to be picking this card up just because it is a tricky card to build around, even though it is really cool. So that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.